So today, we're going to dive into a really fascinating research paper that might just change how AI understands, well, us. It's all about modeling our minds as if they're running code, and it's pointing to a brand new path for artificial intelligence.
You ever have that feeling where an AI just doesn't get you? You ask it to do something super simple, something that seems obvious, and it just totally misses the mark. It's a common thing, right? And it really gets to a deeper problem. Why is it so hard for machines to predict what we're going to do? What's the deal? Why can't they, read our minds?
I mean, it's a huge challenge, especially when we're talking about AI safety and getting robots to actually help us. But what if? What if we've been making it way more complicated than it needs to be? The researchers behind this paper have an idea that the answer might actually be a lot simpler than we think.
Okay, so that brings us to the real heart of the matter, AI's prediction problem. For an AI to work safely and effectively with us, think a self-driving car and traffic or a robot in your home, it absolutely has to anticipate what we're going to do next. It's not a nice to have, it's crucial. But this is exactly where a lot of current tech just hits a wall.
So why did they struggle so much? Well, for one, they are incredibly data hungry. They need a ton of information to learn. They're also really brittle. The moment you throw a new situation at them, they just break. And this is a big one. A lot of them assume we're these hyper-rational beings, calculating every single move perfectly. Which, let's be real, is not how people work. And on top of all that, they're often just too slow and clunky to adapt in real time.
All right, so if the old methods aren't working, what's the alternative? This leads us to the big central idea of this paper. The researchers call it the script insight. And honestly, it might be the breakthrough we've been looking for.
The key idea here is that most of what we do every day isn't the result of some deep, complex thought process. Not at all. Instead, we follow what they call behavioral scripts. Just think of them as simple routines that we run on autopilot to save brain power. A perfect example is driving. Wait for the green light, then go. You don't rethink the laws of physics every time you're at a stoplight. You just run the script.
And that simple idea leads to this really powerful new way of looking at things, thinking about our minds, or at least our everyday behaviors, as if they're running a piece of computer code.
Let's just put these two ideas side by side. The old approach, the rational agent model, assumes we're constantly doing these complex calculations about our beliefs and desires. It's brittle and it's just unrealistic. The new behavioral script approach says no, we're usually just following simple, efficient routines. It's way more adaptive, and it just feels a lot more like how we actually live our lives. We're basically shifting from modeling a super genius philosopher to modeling someone who's just running a simple, effective program.
Okay, that's a brilliant insight. But how do you actually build an AI that can use it? Well, that is where a brand new algorithm comes into play. Let's talk about ROTE.
ROTE stands for Reasoning Over Thematic Episodes, and at its heart, it's an algorithm that was built to do one thing: to take that idea of our mental scripts and treat them like they're actual pieces of computer code. It's a really direct and honestly a pretty clever way to turn that idea into real technology.
And how it works is actually this really elegant two-step process. First, it uses a large language model to just brainstorm. It creates a whole library of possible behavioral programs for a situation. A script for making coffee, a script for crossing the street, things like that. Then, for step 2, the algorithm just watches what a person is doing and uses some pretty smart statistics to figure out which program from its library is the best match. It's basically asking itself, okay, out of all these little scripts, which one is this person most likely running right now? That all sounds pretty slick on paper, but you know what really matters? Does it actually work? How did ROATE do when they put it up against the other models? Well, the researchers threw a whole bunch of scenarios at it. Everything from simple games to a really complex household simulator. And the results? They were pretty dramatic. You can see it right here. ROATE consistently just blew the other methods out of the water. Methods like behavior cloning or even using LLMs directly for prediction. That one bar that's towering over all the others? Yep, that's ROATE.
So how much better was it really? In some of the tests, ROTE was able to predict what a person would do with up to 50% greater accuracy. That is not a small jump. That is a massive leap forward, especially when the AI only has a few examples of someone's behavior to learn from.
So let's zoom out a bit. What does all this actually mean for us? This isn't just some cool academic exercise. This is pointing toward a future where we can have much smoother, much safer, and just more intuitive teamwork between people and AIs.
The researchers who wrote the paper really summed it up perfectly. They said that by changing the problem,
By treating action understanding as just figuring out which program someone is running, Rote opens a real practical path for AI that can work with us in the messy, complicated real world. And that right there, that's the key takeaway.
And that leaves us with one last kind of mind-bending question to think about. This whole technology is about AI getting really good at understanding our simple, predictable habits, the little scripts we run without even realizing it. So, what happens when AI gets so good at this that it understands our unconscious habits even better than we do ourselves?